ברשות my mother, Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Ginsbury, Dayanim, Rabbanin, Morai v'Rabotai. I'd like to call upon Rabbi Mordechai Fima of Anshe Shalom to lead us in Tehillim before we start the Hespedim.
מכתם לדוד שומרני אל כי חסיתי בך אמרת לאדוני אדוני אתה טובתי בעל עליך לקדושים אשר בארץ המה ואדירי כל חפציבם ירבו עצב אותם אחר מהר ובא להסיך נסחיהם מדם ובא לשא את שמותם על שפתי אדוני מנת חלקי וחוסי אתה תומיך גורלי חבלים נפלו לי בנעימים אף נחלת שפרה עלי אברך את אדוני אשר יעצני אף לילות יסרוני חיליותי שיביתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד כי מימיני בא למות לכן צמח ליבי ויגל כבודי אף בשרי ישכון לבטח כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת תודיעני אורח חיים סובח שמחות את פניך נעימות בימינך נצח
L'chvod HaTorah, L'chvod Beit HaKnesset, can I please ask everybody to please turn off your mobile phones? B'shut Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Ginsbury, Dayanim, Rabbanim, Morai v'Rabotai. Mitzvah Gdola lehaspid al hamet kera'ui. The Shulchan Aruch continues and explains how to achieve this. We have amongst us here, Baruch Hashem, speakers who are experts in this, far better than myself, including who has flown in, especially from Eretz Israel, Rav Butbul, a son-in-law of Chacham Ovadia, Alav HaShalom. It is just 3 weeks since the loss of this giant, the loss of the giant, Sar HaTorah, Chacham Ovadia Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha. This loss is great. The wound is still fresh. The Gemara in Moed Katan says and quotes, Al tivku lamet yoter midai, ve'al tanudu lo yoter mikishiur. The Gemara there continues and explains. However, with a loss so great and painful, how can we not cry? Who will fill this void, and how will we be able to continue? Baruch Hashem, many of us here were indeed lucky enough and were privileged and were zocheh to have been in the presence of Chacham Ovadia Alav HaShalom, both in Eretz Israel and here in Galut, in the Galut of England. The Rav, known to us all, the Rav Alav Shalom, known to us all as Maran, left his impression on this world, one that will not be erased. I'm sure many of us here have a story or received a psak or have an experience from Chacham Ovadia Alav Shalom to share. However, we are not here today for this. Nor have you come here this evening to listen to me. My role here is purely that of a chairman. We have all come here to listen to Divrei Hesped by those worthy to say Divrei Hesped. I therefore call on Rabbi Ginsbury to give Divrei Pticha this evening.
Chief Rabbi, Dayan Erenshoi, Dayanim, Rabbanim, our special guest, son-in-law, Chatan of HARAV OVADIA YOSEF ZT'L, Havdun Chaim L'Chaim, HARAV Putzpul, Maranan, Rabbanan, Rabbatai, ladies and gentlemen. The Pasuk in Yeshaya tells us, Shalom, Shalom, Larochoik, V'la'karoiv, Oma Hashem Urafosiv. Shalom, peace, peace, to the one who may be distant, to the one who is close, says the Rebbeinu Shloim, and I will bring healing to him. Healing takes different shapes and forms. There is the healing of grief and pain. There is also the healing of the spirit, which requires at times to be nourished, nurtured, refreshed, and strengthened. Tonight is probably an evening on which both elements are required. Rashi on that Pasuk in Yeshaya tells us, Shneihem Shovim, the welcome, La'rochot v'la'korov, is equal. Mishen is yashim v'hurgul b'toirosi v'avedasi, whether it is the one who is well experienced and accustomed to my Torah and to my Aveda, Minu Urov, from his youngest years, Umishan iskariv ato, whether it's the one who just now has drawn near, Mikorev, it's just happened, Loshuv midarke hara, to try and mend the negative and evil ways of the past. Oma Hashem urafosiv, says the Rebbeinu Shalom, I will heal him, meichol yoyu meichatov, from whatever, whether it's physically, spiritually, emotionally, whatever healing is required will be brought by the Rebbeinu Shalom. There are special human beings who walk this earth, whose ambition, through their devekus to the Rebbeinu Shalom, their closeness to Hashem Yisparach, through their amal haTorah, through their toil in Torah, yomam v'layla yishposu, by day and by night, through their avas Yisrael and their commitments, who seek to walk in the path of shalom, shalom, larochut v'la'korev, and assuredly, the emotional outpouring from all ranks of Klal Yisrael, whether at the time of the Levaya or whether since, has shown HARAV OVADIA ZT'L to have been preeminent amongst those in our generation, who've shown what it means. The Bali Musa Medayik, Chazal Medayik, La Rochik V'la, the aspiration is to the one who is Rochik, even before the one who is Korei, that Ava for Shleimus, that pursuit and love of bringing everyone to connection with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Our chief rabbi, Rabbi Mervis, is someone who shares that passion of Shalom Shalom Larochel V'Lakorev. In his installation address less than 2 months ago, he used the pasuk from Tehillim Lamed Daled, Gadlu Lashem Iti U'Leromim Shmoyach Tov, the exhortation to join with him and with others in elevating Kovod Malchus Shemayim, in extolling the name of Hashem together jointly as one of the key focal points of his chief rabbinate. The Ibn Ezra on that pasuk says that Gadlu Lashem Iti means Ki'u Yedabe Imohem, as though David HaMelech is speaking with each and every individual, addressing the ranks of Klal Yisrael. U'mevakish mehem, he requests of Moshe Ya'azruhu, they should help him legadel es Hashem, to elevate and to make great the name of Hashem. Tonight, we gather to salute someone, as I said before, who through his Amal HaTorah, through his love of Klal Yisrael, of the Ribbono Shel Olam, through his concern for every segment of Klal Yisrael, established a remarkable connection and influence. And it is entirely appropriate that our first must-be here this evening should be the Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Mervis Shlita, who uses as one of his key leitmotifs the Pasuk Gadlu Lashem Iti. Rabbi Mervis, it is an honor to introduce you at this particular moment. It is an honor for us at Raleigh Close to host this gathering in memory of one of the outstanding Chachamim, Tzadikim, and Talmidei Chachamim of our generation. And it is my privilege to introduce Chief Rabbi Mervis Shlita to be Maspid HARAV OVADIA YOSEF ZT'L.
כבוד הדיינים שליטה, כבוד הרבנים שליטה, אורח הכבוד הרב אוטבול שליטה, מוריי ורבותיי. I would like to share with you a Gemara from Masechet Ketubot of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught, Mevatlin Talmud Torah lehotzat hamet ulachnasat kala. It is permissible to cancel the study of Torah in order to participate in the levaya of a person, to bring him to eternal rest, and also to bring a kala to her chuppah. The principle in the Gemara here is clear. You cancel your shiur, you cancel your chavruta, you leave the Beit Midrash when there is a levaya. But is this the case under all circumstances? And so the Gemara asks, Bameh dvarim amurim? Under what circumstances do we actually say this? And the Gemara tells us, Keshe'eni mo kol tzorko. This only applies when there are insufficient people who are available to attend the levaya. Aval yeshi mo kol tzorko. But if there are sufficient people there, ein mevatlin. We do not cancel Talmud Torah. So if my presence won't make a difference to the vast multitudes who are there, it is better that I should continue my study of Torah. But now the obvious question is, Kama kol tzorko, asks the Gemara. How do we define sufficient numbers? If, let's say, there are 9 men there, and through my presence there will be a minyan and Kaddish can be recited, certainly we understand I must leave the Beit Midrash in order to be present at that levaya. But what happens if there are 99 people there, and I'm the 100th? Or 999 and I'm the 1,000th? Or 100,000 and I'm one extra face within that multitude of people? At what limit do we reach the number of kol tzorko to say there are sufficient people at this levaya, the rest should go back to the Beit Midrash to study? And the Gemara brings 4 different answers to this question. The first is, if there are 12,000 men and 6,000 shofar blowers, that is kol tzorko. No more people are required. Rashi explains that the shofar was blown in areas in order to let people know that a levaya was taking place, as you have in shchunot, within towns and cities in Israel today. A car goes round with the announcement blaring to one and all to know, so-and-so has unfortunately passed away, the levaya will be at a certain time, people should come out in order to join in those who are attending. So in ancient times they didn't have this modern facility, they had the shofarot. So altogether 18,000 people, that's a sizable crowd. The second view in the Gemara is 13,000 people, including 6,000 shofar blowers. Then there is a third view, the view of Ula, who says, Kol tzorko is when you have so many people that there is a continuous trail of individuals from the city gate reaching the Makom Kvorah, the place of burial. And this actually makes a lot of sense. Because if you have that continuous line of people from the city gate towards the place of burial, if you are behind inside the city, while the person is being buried, your participation won't even be noticed. So you should rather go back to the Beit Midrash. And then there is a fourth view, a remarkable view. It's the view of Rav Sheshet, and some say Rabbi Yochanan. And the view is Netilata ki netinata. The taking away of Torah should be compared to the giving of Torah. Ma netinata b'shishim ribo, af netilata b'shishim ribo. Just as the Torah was given in the presence of 600,000 people, so too the Torah should be taken in the presence of up to 600,000 people. And Rashi explains that when a person passes away, the Torah in that person's heart, in that person's mind, on that person's lips, within that person's consciousness, departs from this world, and we escort that Torah out of this world. When the Torah was given at Har Sinai, there were 600,000 people present. Therefore, at a levaya, when we escort the Torah out of this world, there should be up to 600,000. What an astonishing view. So if there are, let's say, 250,000 people, you should still go. Up to 600,000. But beyond 600,000, stay in the Beit Midrash. Your Talmud Torah should continue. And then the Gemara adds a comment. Hani mili b'man dekari batani. This only applies to a person who has passed away, who has been able to study psukim of Torah and to study Mishnah. Aval b'man demakri. However, with regard to a person, according to the Rif, this is a person who studies Gemara. According to Rashi, this is a person who teaches others, let le shiura. With regard to such a Talmid Chacham, there is no ceiling limit. Even if there are already above 600,000, you should still go. Leave the Beit Midrash for that levaya. Throughout the years when studying this sugya in Masechet Ketubot, how many of us have thought, Ribono Shel Olam, what are Chazal talking about? When will you ever have a levaya at which there will be so many hundreds of thousands of people? This is theoretical, it's pie in the sky. But only a matter of weeks ago, we witnessed such a levaya. The largest levaya in the history of Israel, and probably the largest that there will ever be. It wasn't the levaya of a president, nor a prime minister, nor a football player, or a pop star. It was the levaya of a remarkable Talmid Chacham. Let le shiura. There was no limit to his gadlut, to his mastery of Torah, to his teachings, to his piskei halacha, and at his levaya, let le shiura. According to some estimates, 700,000, 800,000, up to 1 million individuals. And those were the ones who were there, ala makom, at the place, at the time, together with many thousands of people worldwide, ourselves included. who were ever conscious of the deep loss that Am Yisrael suffered at the time. And tonight we gather here to identify with all of Klal Yisrael at a time when we mourn the loss of Maran HARAV OVADIA YOSEF ZT'L Tzaddik v'Kadosh Livracha. And I ask the question, how did it happen that a man could command so much respect, such a great following? If you view the videos, the photos of the hundreds of thousands who are following his remains, people sitting down and crying, tears coming down from the faces of individuals. How did it happen that one man could have such an impact on so many people around the world? And I would like to attribute it to 3 reasons. Reasons which I identify strongly with, and reasons which we need to take to heart with regard to the future direction of our community. First of all, his love of Torah, the fact he was devoted to Talmud Torah. We see in the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot how an individual is compared to Torah. He was Kula Torah. Ki hem chayenu v'orech yameinu v'hem negei yomam v'layla. Torah is our life and the length of our days, and we shall meditate in Torah day and night. That is how Rav Ovadia lived. And it is because he lived Torah, his entire being was Torah, with his genius of mind and power of interpretation and courage that accompanied his Piskei Halacha, he was respected and loved by one and all. And from him we should learn about the critical importance of Talmud Torah within our communities. Our community centers, the places where we gather to pray, are called Beit Tfilah, houses of prayer. Also Beit HaKnesset, houses of assembly. But also colloquially we call them shul, which is such a marvelous term, which means school, the place of learning. And sure enough, so many things happen within our shuls. Cultural events, social events, kiddushim, gatherings. But the most important thing to take place in our shuls is study. It is Talmud Torah, which must be the ikar, the very essence of the being of our communities. And that is the only way in which we can drive Klal Yisrael successfully forward into the generations to come, through taking a leaf out of the book of HARAV OVADIA ZT'L. My second point. Many times HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe Rabbeinu, Daber b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta elehem. Speak to b'nei Yisrael and say to them. Why was it necessary to say Daber ve'amarta? Speak and say. Daber is a harsh term. Lidaber means to stand on a podium, on a bima, to give a drasha, to give a talk, to make a statement to the nation. The amarta, that is lashon raka, it is soft-spoken words. It's the conversation that takes place between one person and another. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, if you're going to be a great spiritual leader, you have to be makayim, both dibur and ve'amarta. You have to know how to stand in front of the thousands, to address them with authority, and you also have to have the capacities to speak on a one-to-one basis with love in a gentle and passionate way. That was the greatness of Chacham Ovadia. He was able to stand and address the thousands. Through his writings, he reached hundreds of thousands. And at the same time, so many numerous numbers of people have recollections, memories of those one-to-one moments when they were with him. And he was able to speak b'lashon amami with people in their own language, to relate to them as one of the chevra in such a special way, giving them their bracha, a little clap on the face, being with them in a very special and close way. And we need to learn from him as well, as spiritual leaders in our communities, to have the capacity to be makayem dibur, to give the sermons, to give the drashot, to give the shiurim, and at the same time ve'amarta, to be close to people, to care about people, to speak with menschlichkeit and in a caring way between ourselves and others. The third reason, I believe, for the greatness of HARAV OVADIA, he had the courage always to try his best to find a lenient ruling to make the personal lives of people easier. And there are so many, literally thousands of stories of occasions when many rabbis around the world could not find it possible to be matir, to allow a leniency to take place, even though they would have wanted to, because who were they to be able to say that? But Chacham Ovadia was a person who was able, with his genius of mind and courage of convictions and knowledge of Torah, to make life easier for the others. Let me share with you one of numerous anecdotes. It was told to me by somebody who was in the home of Chacham Ovadia. He was visiting him. He came to ask him something. Everything was quiet and tranquil there, and suddenly, it was in the afternoon, in walked a large group of people. They were members of a family. They came in. The simcha on their faces was enormous. They came into the study of Rav Ovadia. They kissed his hand. They embraced him. They were thanking him. Tears were rolling down their cheeks. Something quite remarkable was happening. It was one large family. What were they coming to thank him for? And this visitor discovered that morning Chacham Ovadia had given a psak halacha for the family. How do you have a psak halacha for a family? Well, this is what happened. A lady had made aliyah from France. She was at that time in her 80s. She had married in her 20s. During the war, her husband had disappeared. Eidut, evidence was given about the fact that he had passed away in the war. She wasn't an aguna. She was permitted to marry again. She did marry again. In her first marriage, she had no children. In her second marriage, she had many children and grandchildren. Talmidei Chachamim, amongst them Rabbanim and Mechanchim. A wonderful family within Klal Yisrael. And then, at a much later time, it happened only a week before this incident took place, a man walked into their lives. He had been searching all the time for his wife. The dead man was alive. The evidence had been false. And what did this mean for the family? Those children and grandchildren were mamzerim. She was an Eshet Ish. Rabbi after rabbi was consulted. Everybody gave their heartfelt feelings of understanding and empathy and sympathy. When it came to Rav Ovadia, he gave his all to investigate the situation, to go into the depths of the matter, to find out the circumstances of the first marriage, the time of the Khatanah, what had happened, what had taken place. And through his genius and his courage, he was able to mati the family and to declare that those children and grandchildren are not mamzerim. Hence their elation, their gratitude, their thanks to him. One of many thousands of stories of how this man within halacha was able to alleviate the plight of people and the burden on their lives wherever he was capable of doing so. There are many other reasons for his greatness, which you will be hearing through the other Hespedim this evening. But let me just tell you that our entire community here, Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, joined together to mourn and to share our grief for a truly outstanding man who was a light for all of us and who is now deeply missed and mourned. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May his memory be for an eternal blessing. V'yisror b'Yisrael chaim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachlato, v'yanuach b'shalo amishkavo, v'nomar Amen.